Norman had its first comprehensive transportation plan developed and adopted in 2014. So I remind folks about that because for most cities our size, they've had comprehensive transportation plans 20 or 30 years back. And so Norman has been a little slow to really become organized and very formal about its transportation planning process. But now that we have that, we're making great progress. And not that we haven't made progress in the past, but it's been a little bit more fragmented. And so I think the fact that the council adopted that plan in 2014 speaks volumes about how we're thinking more long range now and more comprehensively about transportation. It's no longer just about cars and trucks, it's about all forms of transportation. The transportation bond issue is funded with, or would be funded if it's approved, with ad valorem or property taxes. So if you own property in Norman, you will be impacted by this. However, the bond issue has been configured in a way that the property tax levy will remain the same as it is today if the voters approve this bond issue on April 2nd. We're able to do that because there's other debt financing that's going off the books or being retired, if you will, from previous transportation programs that go back 20 and 30 years. And so that tax levy can remain exactly the same as it is if voters approve it. So a no new tax initiative is what this is. If you vote for the transportation bond issue, your property taxes will not go up. They will also not go down. They will stay right where they are. The other thing we point out to folks is that for this particular bond issue, we are leveraging our local bond funds or our local property taxes against federal transportation grants. And so we're getting, for every dollar of our money, of our property tax dollars, we're getting $2 in improvements through that federal transportation grant leveraging. Again, our voters have liked that in the past. It makes sense to them that we're doing the best we can to get other, in this case, federal government dollars to participate in our transportation system. Well, there are 19 projects, so it's a lot to take in. I encourage folks to get on our website, and there's maps and there's lots of really great information about each project. And again, what I found is people tend to focus on the transportation improvements in the areas that they travel or where they live or where they work. And that's fine, that's great. I think this transportation bond issue has something for everyone, whether you, regardless of where you work or live in Norman, you will benefit from this program. And I think that speaks to our needs. We pick these projects based upon that comprehensive transportation plan where we needed better transportation systems. And again, sometimes that's widening a 2-lane road to a 4-lane road, and sometimes that's just a streetscape enhancement in the Lindsay Street area of the campus. Each of these have their own unique purpose. Sometimes they're focused on more capacity for cars and trucks and larger vehicles, and sometimes we're focused on bike lanes or sidewalks or accessible trails for disabled individuals and so on. So it's a truly multimodal program of transportation improvement serving all of our transportation needs. Without a good transportation system, without this kind of investment, those other kinds of private investments are not going to come here either. I know, working with a lot of industrial developments, economic development prospects in this city, that they look at those basic infrastructure elements very strongly. They look at the ability to have good transportation for, maybe it's truck deliveries, maybe it's rail access. But transportation is a big issue for economic development prospects in any city. And most of us can, when we talk about transportation, most of us can relate to roads and bridges and interchanges and highways, and it just makes sense to us. And that's, I think, why there's more support in Norman for transportation programs than there has been for stormwater. But we really worked hard for several years to educate Norman citizens on the reason that stormwater systems and infrastructure exists and why we need to do better with that system here in Norman, whether it's replacing bridges or culverts or whether it's maintaining those systems of channels and streams better. But the bottom line is there's never been a road built anywhere in the country or in the world probably that didn't have a stormwater system associated with it. So in the public works industry, we think of it as one large system of infrastructure. But in the funding perspective, they are funded differently. Transportation is funded differently than stormwater in cities and states and the federal government. And that's why these three propositions are coming as they are, because the funding of these systems has to be handled separately. But if we don't fund it all, the system doesn't work as it's supposed to. Transportation can't work without stormwater. Stormwater can't work without transportation.